Welcome everybody. Tonight is the first episode of our video series we are calling Mission Debriefing. I am Kevin Lyons and I'm joined with myself and Jake Ream. Go ahead and say hi, Jake.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And accompanying us is Walker Darkow. Go ahead, Walker.
How's it going? I'm here for the fun.
Fun and fluff and jokes. It'll be a good time. So here we're going to be just covering our basic idea of going through and analyzing games and discussing our thoughts and hoping to give some insight on decisions that are made or thoughts that are going through our heads as we play games so that you can review and kind of practice and get some ideas from other players and what they're thinking and even chime in. We have the Twitch chat open, so we're allowing you guys to have immediate input to us as we go through and do this commentary and can join us for the ride. So with no further ado, we'll go ahead and talk about the lists.
You want to go through yours first, Kevin, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can go through mine. So I've been listening to a lot of the Crate podcasts and other podcasts and listening about how Wedge is terrible. So I decided I wanted to just see if Wedge was actually terrible. So I am running Wedge with...
Can we call it Nora Wedgley in this situation?
Well, yeah,
definitely. It's got to be, right?
Yeah, so you guys will see in a little bit that there was an issue with the overlay tooltip. Like, we had Wedge programmed in, but it decided that I needed to play Nora instead until we just said no, like, halfway through the game and fixed it. So I'm playing Luke, Wedge, and Sabine. Basically a small twist on the list that Nathan and I took to Coruscant this year. You've got your pretty standard Luke with supernatural proton torpedoes and an R2 astromech, not R2D2, and S-foils. Sabine with trick shot and knee and numb. And Wedge has crack shot, R3 astromech, and proton torpedoes, and I'm bidding 2 points. So I'm at 198. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so in my list, I've got the exact same Luke because it's Super Luke and definitely the best ship in the Rebel faction right now, hands down. The change that I made was I'm trying out Han. So many people have been talking about how, you know, the fat turrets basically got pushed out of the game from first edition to second edition because they no longer have the 360 arc. So I wanted to give one a try and see exactly how many times I actually needed to rotate that arc and if it was something that might be viable. You know, 2 ships right now in the meta that we're seeing probably isn't the best call just because of the numerous amounts of proton torpedoes that are being spammed with some of the Imperialists, also lists like yours, but just wanted to put these 2 ships on the table, see how they flew. My Han Solo, I've got Trick Shot, Kanan Jarrus, and Jyn Erso. The reason for Kanan being is I don't have to have engine upgrade to make that red boost white. I can just rely on doing a white move the next turn and having basically a full dial open, but also having a soft mod if I don't need to boost. And then Jyn there to be able to give either one of those ships the evade, make them a little more tanky if they need to be. Throughout the day that we played this game, it seemed to work pretty good. There was, in the second game I played with this, I used the evade a lot more on Han, and it showed just how effective it was with him being able to, you know, boost around, get out of those arcs, and then when he would take a shot, have the evade token guaranteeing limited amount of damage.
Yeah, and I think we see a little bit in this game too how effective Kanan actually is. And afterwards we talked about it, and I like the call better than engine. I think it's a little bit more expensive than engine upgrade, but it gives you some extra benefits and it allows you to simulate having engine.
Yep.
So it's an interesting thing that you'll see a little bit of in this game, but I can definitely see some possible viability of Kanan on Han or Dash later on.
Yeah, I like the utility too. You know, that's one of the, in the past, has been one of the strengths of the Rebel faction is just being able to have utility, and that's why I went with Kanan over just strictly engine upgrade, even though engine is a little bit cheaper. Just wanted that extra bit of utility there.
Well, it's nice to see Kanan being used on something other than first edition Ray.
Yeah.
Just using the sloop and so.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about our setup while we're still getting into the first couple of turns here. I know you, Kevin, you like to split your forces and use the outer two ships as good flankers depending on which way your opponent goes.
Well, and that's a question we have: is why is your setup so spread, Kevin?
Yeah, so I like to keep Sabine protected in the middle. Since there's a bunch of rocks, there's no way you can immediately charge her and just destroy her. Luke on one side because I had initiative. I lost the dice roll, so I had to place my 6 before your 6. Once I saw Luke was placed there, I decided to put Wedge on the outside to kind of make you choose. Are you going to go for Luke or are you going to come on the other way and go for Wedge? So I like to give my opponent some decisions early on and say, okay, which way are you going to approach? Because none of my ships really want to come straight on against anything. And this allows me to easily flank with someone. So when I saw you set up this way, I was like, okay, well, it is highly unlikely that Han is just going to K-turn turn 1 and you're going to just come all in on the other direction against Luke. So I was easily able to just say, okay, well, I'm going to pull back Wedge and hide behind this rock and see what you do. And it allowed me to just send Luke around the backside and immediately become the flanker, which ideally is where I want him, not shot at shooting torpedoes. So that was my thought process initially. Unlike a lot of, I think, big fat turret matchups, yours is not meant to be a lone wolf or a lone style.
Yep.
You'll keep them together, which is different than I think most big turret lists that we've seen in the past, at least from Rebels. So this is a little bit different than like a decimator where you're just going to charge in with all forces going.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a little bit more of my play style. You know, like you mentioned, a lot of the fat turrets in the past have been the lone wolf carriers, and I like to make sure that they're closer together, can support each other a little bit better, and make it a little easier to make sure that I'm getting both of my ships shooting at the same target, doing a little of that priority firing.
Yeah, and I think Rebels are just better at it that way. It was, unless it was Rey and Lorik, then it was a different story. But yeah, I think this is a different kind of approach. And we haven't, let's be real, like we haven't seen a big turret played. At least I've never seen a game with a big base turret played in second edition yet. So I still don't really know what to make of it and had to kind of be cautious on how we wanted to approach it.
Yep. Yeah, and so going into my setup a little bit there, that's kind of why I started Luke in the middle. Kind of wanted to play it out, that turn or two, be able to react to what you were doing with your Sabine and Luke. Me having the initiative or giving you player 1 and being able to react to your Luke meant, if I needed to cut away hard, I could, and then regroup after that first turn or two to see really where you were going. And Han, I think with the big turrets and the bow tie arc, we're going to see a lot of that, just circling the track around the outside. Means that you don't have to rotate that arc as much. If you're not cutting in through the middle, there's less chance of your opponent's ships cutting you off, getting to a flank that would force you to rotate that arc. Just saves that action on that turret, or on the big base bow tie double arc. So that's why I put Han off to the side. Figured we were just going to loop around probably for a turn or two, see where we ended up positionally. I know whenever we play each other, we do that quite a bit. The first 25 minutes or so seems to be just getting into position.
You got to do the dance.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah, and I'm a positional player. And actually, this turn leading into what we're doing right now, I had to really decide because I sat there and thought, I'm like, okay, is Luke maybe just going to supernatural and charge in and just try to pop Sabine this turn? Or are you going to kind of hang out? I wasn't sure what you were going to do with Luke. I knew that I wanted to get my Luke on the outside, which is where I brought him, and I got my target locked, so he's in the perfect flanking position. But I was really concerned if your Luke was going to pre-boost in and then like 3 or 4 forward and just try to torp her turn 1 and maybe undershoot my Luke. But I was like, it's probably an educated guess. She would be sitting behind a rock, I mean, she'll probably be okay. But
Yep.
I was concerned, and I had to try to figure out, do I come in between those rocks or do I go around them with my Luke? And I decided that I'm going to send him around, and that you would probably not shoot through those rocks in case I got crazy with Wedge and did like a 3 bank.
Yeah, definitely have to be careful with Luke there, especially knowing that, where your wedge is positioned after that first engagement or first activation, that you can very easily turn in, and I could be in a very bad position with Luke taking a torpedo,
Yeah.
second turn.
Yep. And then I also have to be conscious too that you could do the old 4 forward boost. So with Wedge, I figured my best option was just create as much distance and allow myself the flexibility to turn if I need to, or if you come in sharp around that rock in between the two, I'm able to actually respond and still have a shot.
Yep.
So I had to just create as much distance as I could and kind of join Sabine and Wedge together. And just say I have a united front in case your Luke turns in, or if you decide to swing deep with Han and come around the outside, I have enough space that I can still try to move and get a shot.
Yeah. So we've got a question in the chat, Kevin. They're wondering if I had a clear target priority, or if I was just going to kind of see what you offered up. And initially, I was looking at, I want to get Wedge off the board, just because of you being player one and my Luke being able to react to your Luke. That means if I can get your Wedge off the table quickly, then both of my ships are able to react and respond to everything that you're doing. So Wedge was definitely priority one for me.
Yeah, and that makes sense, especially when I have initiative. You have the ability to react versus me. So this is another kind of big turn where, at least in my mind, I had to think about, is Luke coming inside that rock or not? And I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what you were going to do with him. I mean, Sabine's move feels pretty standard, although I wanted to commit her forward so she would get a shot for sure on Han.
Yep.
But I didn't want to overcommit her so that in case Luke came in, he just pops her. And Han shoots, and she just never gets to shoot.
Yeah.
So that was like, I really hemmed and hawed. Like, do I go aggressive here or do I not? So I really had to think about it. And then in my Luke, I was like, okay, if I just go straight and then boost, and you go fast or forward enough, I won't have a shot. And then I sat and thought, I was like, okay, if he does come in, I need to be able to position myself so that my Luke at least has some kind of a shot, or if Han goes slow, Luke might have a shot. And those are the types of things that I'm thinking about with my Luke in this situation. And then Wedge, I mean, Wedge can kind of decide, do I want a hard turn 3 or 3 bank?
Yep.
And those were the couple thoughts, because I mean, I could just try to unload on your Luke if you send him in.
Yeah, and that
But
really.
if you notice, Jake has 2 dials down. Kevin has 0 dials down. So just something to keep a watch for.
This is true. I mean, I had to think about it. And let's be fair, I basically have 2 supernatural ships, so I actually have to think a little bit more than just one.
Yeah, well, and to your credit there, you've got me in a position now going into this turn of the planning phase. Like you said, I have to be really careful with my Luke because, in my mind, you're going to 2-turn, 3-turn with Wedge. If I go a little bit too fast with Luke, you pick up a lock right there for a proton torpedo. And then your Luke, if he comes in really fast, which I anticipated that you would do, that's 2 proton torpedoes on my Luke. And ideally, Luke is still my endgame ship as he is yours. I can't afford to lose him there. It didn't play on me as much as it did you for having to really think about those choices. I knew I had to be extremely careful with Luke.
Well, and even Han doesn't have that many options right now in that spot.
Right. But at least
Right.
when I was setting these dials, with the distance that Kevin's Luke is away from Han, I'm not really worried about him double torping Han. I'm more concerned about losing Luke too early.
This just in. Luke dialed down. Wedge and Sabine still up. There was a question, though, in chat that said, are these guys playing Rebels because they're stubborn, don't like winning, or have head injuries and can't stop fixating on past glories. So the question was for me. I'm sticking with stubborn. I know you like winning. The head injury thing is intriguing, though.
There's ground for that. I think some of it is like my big reason is I don't want to play Empire because I don't want to spend the game bidding 15 to 17 to 18 points and almost losing just because I didn't bid enough. I also don't want to do that with Scum either, so I just am not interested in it. And I think I just want to be a Rebel player because I've enjoyed Rebel ships the most. I've played the most Rebel ever, but I really like Luke. Luke feels really good to play, and I want to try to find that third ship to go with them. And I think
With them, you mean Luke and Sabine?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Or I mean Luke and Wedge. I mean, who's
Luke,
the two?
Luke and Sabine is pretty standard in my opinion right now as
Right.
the two best ships in the Rebel.
We got 3 dials.
Agrees.
Well, just
Hey,
hold on, Walker.
At least, hold on. At least I did catch Jake off guard with where Luke ends. He was like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be there."
Yeah, I did.
Is Jake down to 1 dial now?
And this is where I had gone back and reviewed what I was doing for moves, and yeah, actually, so originally I was going to turn in with Luke there. That was my original play, but after reviewing it, while Kevin gave me enough time to look at the board state and really analyze where I thought his ships were going to end up. I ended up changing my dial with Luke, and I think it did catch Kevin off guard.
Yeah,
We
I didn't
both caught the other one off guard.
Right.
I didn't expect Luke to go where he went.
We got old guard, new guard, off guard.
So I did add a couple of ship markers there on the stream, just so we can differentiate between our 2 Lukes.
Sure.
And then
You
we
should
also
play
know which
like
one's Luke and which one's Wedge.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, that might matter a little bit later on.
I will ask, you could maybe switch the numbers since you're highlighted in green on the bottom of the screen and Kevin is highlighted in blue.
No.
It's asking a lot.
It
for him
is.
to think.
I'm just trying to be consistent here.
Okay. This
So
one
this
time I'll
barrel
give
roll-
it to you.
This barrel roll really. I watched your face after I did it, and you just were like, "Huh." Were you worried that I was going to be in range still after your Luke's move?
I wasn't worried that I was still going to be in range there. I was just, I guess it kind of caught me off guard because I didn't expect you to barrel roll because you did that as an action, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I figured
opened my
I
foil
thought
and
your
I barrel rolled.
I thought your position was good enough that you probably didn't need to, and just because you target locked me the turn before. Yeah, so it caught me off. The barrel roll did catch me off guard.
Yeah, and my thought was in case he turned in, next turn I can just supernatural again, barrel roll, and I basically double barrel roll in, and then I can come right behind your Luke and slide in nicely. And
Yeah.
John also came in.
No, and that just shows that the planning ahead. You're getting in position for that 2 or 3 turns down the road, which
Yep.
is definitely a good sign of high level play, which is not going to look like low level because you're not going to run over a rock. Thank you, Supernatural.
Not this game. Yeah, so this turn, I was kind of regretting not doing a 2-bank with Sabine and just making sure she got a little bit closer. But I was so deathly afraid of a torpedo and just her dying.
It's funny how we were both scared of the same thing, but for different reasons. But it is, when Luke is firing that torpedo, having both force available as modifiers with target lock, your chances. What are your chances of 4 hits, Kevin? You're the math guy.
I don't know. It's like average of 3.75 damage though.
Even really, you've got the lock on Luke, but like Han could be easily taking 3 shots right here.
Yes, He almost does. I'm just barely out of range with my Luke, I think.
Yep.
All right, so he
Wedge
shot
gets to
right there.
shoot,
Yep.
but I didn't. I couldn't close distance to get a target lock, so I just had to focus. I think.
Wedge shot on Han. Han evaded. Now Sabine.
No, then
No,
his
wait.
Sean,
I'm going the other way around. Sorry.
his Han will shoot. And I think he doesn't get hardly anything on his attack
Yeah.
roll, even after the rerolls.
Yeah, what, one hit? Rock near him. Oh, crit. Aggressive defense dice right there.
Yeah, and then it came down to, okay, is Luke in the right position or not? Is he close enough? And I think we measure it. I'm just barely out
Yeah.
of range.
It was close though. I mean, it was probably what, 2 or 3 millimeters out.
Yeah, and that was part of why I opened the foils, in case I was in range. I would have at least a decent shot at Han.
Mm-hmm. I know that's one of the things that I'm still working on remembering is the switching the S foils after doing a supernatural. Second edition included or introduced a lot of new triggers, and I think for me that's probably one of the hardest things to get used to is just so many more triggers.
Yeah, especially with extended.
Yeah.
With extended, there's so many triggers and timing windows that you have to think about and worry about that we never really had to worry about before.
Yep.
So
Well, and that's always my problem I get with with having bombs, especially like if your opponent has the what I'm trying to remember, you got to use the right terms for 2.0. The initiative 2 ship, and yours are like 3+. Then they're like, okay, my 2, and you're like, nah, don't show me that dial.
Yep.
I still have to decide about the bomb thing.
Yeah.
Yep, and that'll come. I think it's the
Right.
play. But yeah, I remember it at Coruscant too. There was a couple times we had to back up the ships because I never got an opportunity to even try to drop a bomb.
Yep.
So that was just like, oh wait, hold on, you have to move back. So here, obviously, I'm trying to figure out where's the best place to put my Luke, knowing your Luke's probably just gonna one forward. And I was like, well, all right, we know where Han's gonna be, at least from a Sabine and Wedge perspective.
Yep.
I wasn't too worried about that, but it was okay, what's the best thing I can do with my Luke versus your Luke? And we exchanged torpedoes.
Yeah, and I was thinking, where can I put the Falcon to be able to hopefully boost out of taking a torpedo? That was the big thing going. Decision that I was trying to make was, I could turn the Falcon in here, but again, that's a lot of, you're looking at all 3 of your ships having firing arcs on the Falcon. We're a little bit far away for me to turn in and be able to boost past you. Also because you're coming in, your Wedge is moving first, so you're going to probably come in, block up most of my hard turns.
And that's what I'm thinking about. What are you thinking right here, Jake? Because if he's got proton torps on both Nora Wedgley and on Luke, there's a lot of Luke can easily be in range 2 to 3 of both of them this turn.
Right, so I've got to try to keep range on Luke or stay out of range of Luke, expecting that I'm probably still going to take that shot from Wedge. But if I'm only taking one, Han has the health. I don't want to take a proton torp if I don't have to, but definitely not 2 in 1 turn.
Well, and that's a chat question. Why not play for the bump? Have Han bump Wedge?
Just because I don't think so. It is a good question, and that's a great way to take away those shots. But I don't think I have the room to turn in
initiative 6.
Yeah, right. So his Wedge is
that's the problem. Yeah, I move first. So even if he did like a 3 bank in or a 3 hard, if I just 1 forward or 1 bank Wedge, which hint I do, he would not be able to bump.
Yeah, I can't.
So yeah,
Yep, I don't have the my fastest moves, that 3 turn 3 bank. I don't have the speed. I'm not close enough already to be able to cause the bump just on the move.
and I think actually early on having initiative helped me. Like I played having initiative, I think pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
trying to set some of those up, and later on you'll see it as well. But like getting that target lock on you on the second turn, I think was a big deal because now you couldn't play that game of, well, I'll just try to control range and you
Right.
can't torpedo me. Now the threat of me torpedoing you was always there because I got it right away.
Yeah, definitely.
So if I just saw another chat question. So like if he 3 banks in and my wedge does a 1 bank in, even if he boosts, he can't get far enough to get out of Wedge's arc.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be able to. And based on Sabine, you'd think Sabine's either going to go forward or she's going to 1 bank towards the corner and cover that area. So it's more likely that I'm going to have both arcs covering where he's going, knowing now that the Falcon can't just one hard boost anymore.
Right. And if I
So
can't get
you-
past Wedge with a boost, then not only, I mean, I'm not taking a proton torpedo, but I'm taking a range 1 4-dice shot with probably, because you picked up the lock already, right? So target
No,
lock.
I didn't have a lock yet.
didn't?
I had to focus because you were out of range.
Okay. That's right.
Yep. So you have what Luke has one lock on him, and it's from Luke. Correct?
Yes, that's my Luke locked onto his Luke.
Yep.
Yep. Your Luke has his lock. Yeah, and then Wedge doesn't have a lock.
Right.
Yep. Wedge currently doesn't. Nope.
But yeah, if I can't
Spoilers.
boost past, if I turn in and then can't boost past Wedge, then I'm taking 2 range 1 shots, which is basically just like 2 proton torpedoes.
Yep. And I put my Sabine in a position as well to try to come in to where Han has to go.
Right.
I think maybe the only thing you could have done was like if you could hard 1 and then boost, but that would be away towards the board edge, and that would just put you in a really terrible spot.
Yeah, not good.
Well, that's why I was saying before with the options you have with Luke in that spot to kind of get out of arcs. Although Kevin's kind of making a guess here on
Yeah.
hoping to catch you turning in.
Well, he's
I
keeping
guess
his
that you would
options
probably-
open.
Right, but I mean, he could have done, like a little 1 forward to try to keep as much as he could.
Yeah.
Here, like, I don't know.
Yeah, so what I did here was I placed myself in a position where I have 2 possible shots. I could maybe shoot at his Luke if he does a 1 forward, or if Han goes slow or commits in, I might still have a shot on his Han. So I'm looking at a situation where no matter what, I'll probably have a shot at your Luke because you're probably not going to supernatural right into that rock.
Mm-hmm.
But there's what I was thinking he could do right there, and that's what gets him
Yeah.
out of your arc.
Yep.
And then if Han does play it slow, I get 3 shots into Han in 1 turn.
That's true. But if Han survives this, Luke's now behind your Luke.
Well, Jake's going to move after me. There's almost nothing I can do to stop him from getting behind my Luke. I try to just make him play honest as long as I can. But I know going in, like, I can't just have my Luke duel his Luke because he moves after me. He will eventually just win positionally.
Well, I mean, are you saying that initiative, your point bid matters, and that it's not just player skill?
It sure does when you have Supernatural. So I tried to check for the second R3 lock, and Wedge couldn't get Luke, but I could get Han. And I refused to lock a rock because I just don't want to.
Are rocks devices?
A 1 bank isn't green anymore, right? On the Falcon, it's a 2 bank.
Correct. Yep.
Or
The
blue.
1 banks are no longer green. It's
So
one
you were
one
able to use
forward.
Kanan
Yep.
to get rid of that stress.
Correct.
You know what's funny is I had forgot you had trick shot on Han until this round.
Oh yeah. Until
When
it mattered,
when
right?
you announced the 4 dice, I was like, oh. Forgot about that.
Yeah, the one. It's just, speaking of trick shot on a large base, I did find that, unfortunately, the base is most times protruding from either the back or the front of a rock, so it's really hard to use trick shot on a large base.
Yep, that's what I noticed too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this ends up being a range 3, I think. Or was it just range 2 obstructed?
I think you shot a
I shot a Torb.
you shot a
It's 2
torp,
crits.
yeah, and I think it was 3 obstructed.
Okay. So I think I got, what was it, 3 hits? which was average.
Yep.
And then you just took 2 shields because you got 1. And then when you picked up 4 dice to shoot at me and said trick shot, I went, oh, I forgot about that.
I did definitely get some
true Minnesotan fashion. Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
So I think you got like what, 2?
Yeah, I got 2.
Oh. That 4 natty evades.
Yeah.
Dice check.
Right.
Easy. Just roll natties. It's a valid tactic.
Yep.
Right, yeah. I do like that, just the aggressive evade dice just slamming into the attack dice.
Yep. And then the Luke shot didn't do anything, and now Sabine trick shot got to fire off.
2 hits and a crit, 2 natty evades and a focus.
Yeah, and I had already spent Kanan there on offense, so...
No, you spent it getting rid of the stress, didn't you?
No,
You
he wasn't
stress
stressed before that turn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then this was the other situation where I spent a decent amount of time trying to figure out if there was a way. So I immediately was like, he's gonna supernatural too hard his Luke in. I just immediately was like, that's the move you're going to do. So I sat there and was like, okay.
That's over a rock, right?
No,
no. If he does the supernatural in 2 hards, he's gonna go around the rock.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I spent.
Kevin, what you were thinking was I was going to supernatural Luke to the right towards my board edge and then hard 2 back in.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Because I was like, there's no move I can take, I don't think. And it took me a while to figure it out. I was like, okay, could I pre-boost 4K? Could I pre-boost Talon roll? Could I pre-barrel roll? And then I realized I can only barrel roll like a quarter of a base, so I can't go far enough to just like get cute and try to 1-bank into you and make you supernatural around me.
Sure, yeah.
I spent a lot of time trying to figure out if there was some way, shape, or form that I could not get stuck with your Luke behind my Luke and have at least a response.
Yep.
Eventually, I realized there is just no way, and I give up and say, fine, I'm just going to eat it if this is going to happen.
It took you a little while to come to that conclusion, but yeah, you eventually arrived there. So the big thought process for me in this turn was Han. I mean, obviously I have to turn, but do I turn in, plan for the boost, and where exactly are you going to end up with Wedge? You know, are you going to turn Wedge in to try to come at my Luke and then leave, you know, Han behind you?
Were you really worried about Wedge? Him coming in?
I thought that he would probably... you mean come in on Luke?
Yeah, sorry. It's his threat on Luke.
Yeah, I really was, because I think... you know, just like my tactic or my strategy of trying to get Wedge off the board, so then I control, or so you control total initiative and move first. If you can get rid of my Luke, then I mean you're eliminating my endgame ship, and now it's a 3-on-1 against Han, who with Wedge and his ability and proton torps on both Wedge and Luke is going to melt really, really fast.
Yeah. And, you know, he gets a lot of crap, but I did notice just having Wedge around did what I thought. It made players play honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically you have ships that bully Luke and Sabine.
Yeah.
And Wedge says no to that. Like, Whisper can kind of screw with you.
Yeah.
Redline to some degree. I mean, Wedge doesn't fully answer Redline, but he helps a little bit. But a lot of it's like the Fangs or Paylob. Those ships can kind of screw with both of my other ships. And Wedge just comes in like a hammer and can totally change the way people play just because they're afraid of the threat of high damage bursts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if, for example, if you get their range 1 on Han with Wedge, I'm just taking all the damage.
Yeah, you're just taking whatever I roll.
Yep, and you know, and because you probably aren't as scared of the return shot. You roll into range one, target lock. 3-4 damage there is not something to scoff at.
Right.
Han
And your
just melts
Luke,
too
if
fast.
and your Luke, if I get it correct, Wedge just gets to basically say you don't get defense dice, and here's 4 dice with proton torpedo.
Yep.
Because I'll just use crack shot if you do roll a symbol.
Yep.
And that's scary.
Yeah, and that's why you'll see with Luke, what I was thinking on this turn was I need to move fast. I need to, if you're going to turn in towards my Luke with Wedge, so either a 2-turn, 3-turn, I need to move fast enough to be able to slip your arc. And that's why I ended up doing what I did, was because I couldn't risk you turning in with Wedge and doing that slow maneuver with Luke and catching, my Luke then with 2 shots.
Sure.
I think at this point Jake had walked away from the table to get something to drink.
There's a chance, yeah.
Trying to figure out if there was some way I could get Luke behind your Luke, or if I could not just have your, like, I was dead set that you were just gonna barrel roll backwards and 2 hard in, and you were just gonna shoot a torpedo. And I was like, can I even get out of range? I can't get out of range. I'm like, can I get a shot back? I can't get a shot back.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a decent amount of time.
And I mean, I hate to do this, but in your defense, with Supernatural, you do have to go through those decision trees. And there's, with both boost and barrel roll available for Supernatural, it does take time to set that dial if you're not immediately certain what your move is going to be. If you're looking at, especially in this case where you have player 1, you're moving first, you have to give it that extra thought of where my Luke is going to end up.
Yeah. Yep.
You just barrel roll back and do a 1 forward.
And eventually I just was like, all right, I give up. I've got Han in a corner. He can't fully escape. I'm just going to go all in and see if I can catch him with all my ships.
Yeah. And so maybe backing up to my previous turn with Han, I think this was a mistake that I made, allowing you to get Han in that corner. Had I maybe turned in instead, it would have closed range earlier with Han and Wedge, but I think I would have been able to regroup and get away a little bit instead of giving you that chance of exactly where he's going.
Well, and I wonder if some of it was, if you do that, were you afraid that I just ignore Han and just send everyone after Luke? Because let's say you came into the rocks,
yep.
Right? Let's say whatever damage was done. Then I know Han has to at least continue going forward,
right.
And you have to rotate the arc if you want to shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just gun it and just send everyone after Luke.
Yep.
And that's not what Luke wants either.
Right. And the other thing is I was also trying to play his ability. I think I pushed it a little too hard of trying to stay near those rocks and wanted to swing around that outside rock to maybe get the extra 2 or 3 turns out of his ability, which is a mistake as well. Sometimes you just have to accept the disengage, and in the long run it puts you in a better position.
So I think here's where I just gave up and realized that's it. I can't there's nothing I can do to get around this barrel roll too hard. And I'm like, okay, if I just gun it for Han, what can I do? What can I make happen?
Yeah.
So I set my dial and I picked it up and I was like, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm just going to F it. We're going to just go right for Han. I still spent a decent amount of time trying to figure it out.
And again, I hate to defend you at all, but this is one of those pivotal, yeah, can't talk tonight, pivotal turns where you need to make sure that you're setting your dials correctly and you're committing, to...
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think Jake just finished his Mountain Dew and threw the can away, so...
I got that from the store down the street. Walked out the store, went down the block, got gas in my truck, came back, and Kevin had just picked up his dial for one last time.
I was kind of half
I
waiting
did
for
pick it up
Nora to
again,
turn
I
to
forgot.
web
Yeah,
halfway through.
What's that, Walker?
I've never been so like distraught on trying to figure out. It was like a puzzle I just could not solve, and I just gave up eventually. But I've never been so just like, there's nothing I can do.
So we got a question in chat again, wondering what I think I need out of Han before I lose him, so that way I can close the game out with Luke. And even though points wise, I can't trade Han for, let's say, Wedge, I actually think if I can get Wedge off the table just at the same time, or maybe even a turn before I lose Han, then I feel confident that Luke could close that out for me. Really, Han is more of a, I guess, a target of opportunity for you. If I can get you to chase him and commit at him, get Luke behind everything else, then I think his points are well spent.
So the Han job is to get Wedge off the board. That's what you're saying.
That's what you're saying.
I'm just trying to clarify, make sure I'm hearing this all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can trade Wedge for Han, I'll do it every day of the week. Even though his Luke moves after my Luke, I still would be left with 2 ships left. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I would also be up on points.
it's far from an even trade, but with a 1 agility ship, I know I have to trade it for something, and if I can trade it for Wedge, I think Wedge is your kind of linchpin against my Luke moving second. That's, if Wedge is still on the
Did you
table.
just check to make sure the rocks were still 1 apart.
Yeah. Well, Kevin likes to move things around, so got to keep him
I had
honest.
to reach across the whole table. So yeah, this is where I just gave up, and I just brought Luke in and said, here we go, I'm just going to take a lock, and if I eat a torpedo, fine, it'll be obstructed. I'm just going to have to deal with it.
And there's the barrel roll. Do we wait for the too hard?
Yeah, and after I saw his move, I really wish I would have dialed in the too
I
hard.
thought you were, so I was like, there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to accept the too hard. And then I'm like, yep, he's doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. And then you eventually reveal your dial, and I go,
Rebank.
that's not what I expected at all.
Yeah, so I committed to this move early, because
Really?
I actually, really early.
Well,
comparatively. Comparatively a lot earlier than you did. Because like I was saying, I thought that you were just going to go slow with Luke. So by me moving fast, I keep out of your arc with both or out of both Wedge arc and your Luke's arc. Because I thought you were going to turn in with Wedge and go slow with Luke.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I was super terrified. I was like, oh man, I'm going to eat this range 1 focus target lock shot from Luke, and there's nothing I can do. And if I don't, he's going to just torpedo him. It was a painful decision to just make.
Well, and that just goes to show you, you had it set in your mind that I was doing the barrel roll too hard in. And for me, it was a thought, but I didn't spend that much time thinking about it because, again, I had thought your Wedge was going to turn in on my Luke. So even when you spend a lot of time,
X-Wing kind of looks like old low-level X-Wing.
Well, part of it is we've played quite a few games together, and we play, we're playing the player, not the list sometimes, where we're trying to outguess each other, and yeah, then it just ends up where we're choosing completely wrong because I'm choosing that move because I think you're going to think that I'm going to choose a different move, and
Yeah, it was... Well, that in Supernatural changes things so much because there's so many variable positions you could be in. I remember teaching Caden this weekend a little bit when I was showing him... Like, he was going to K-turn Luke in one situation. I was like, well, why don't you just pre-boost at an angle and then K-turn, and you have all this coverage that you wouldn't have had? And he went, oh. And it's like I never thought of that. And so seeing my son kind of realize some of these things, too, was another kind of eye opener to me that there are so many variable positions you could be that normally you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think here you had to boost because you were like, if I boost, I'm out of Luke's arc and I don't eat a torpedo.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I boosted. I didn't want to give you that range 1 crack shot with Wedge, but again,
Well,
I
the
don't
crack
want it
shot
to.
won't matter.
Well, no, right. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I don't want to give you the torpedo and Wedge's shot. So I'm just going to eat that range 1 from Wedge, which I did. And
Do we remember what crit that was? That Wedge.
That was
that was the 2 stress, the panic pilot.
Yeah.
That hit crit.
That was so brutal.
Yep.
And 1 natty. So 2 crits?
Yeah,
Or
but it was
shields.
just on shields.
Right.
Yeah, and getting that panic pilot in that spot there after you had already locked me into a corner was a death sentence, unfortunately.
Jake, you just got scolded and told to put your crit cards in the box.
Yeah.
So
I'm just
this next turn, I think, is actually another good example of. I actually liked that I moved first. I know a lot of people are like, I want to move last. I want to move last. And you'll see what I do with Wedge this turn. And I really like the fact that I moved first in this situation. Also, we get to see the value of R3 Astromech next turn because I spent a lock this turn and I have another lock already.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just excited for the ship we get in some unknown wave that has supernatural reflexes and trajectory simulator. You just do a little wiggle, throw a bomb wherever. You shake your head, but
Well, you
Coming.
can't, right?
No one wants to see that, Walker.
Well,
No one
it
wants
won't
to
work
see
anyway because you drop the bomb during the system phase and you don't supernatural until that ship activates.
oh,
That's
okay.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So you
see, no one wants to see that. The rules won't allow it.
Right.
Thank goodness.
Thank you, FFG developers.
Oh.
So this turn, yeah, those double stress really affected what your options were. Because next turn you could have had a whole bunch of options if you weren't double stressed.
Yep.
And I think you tried to get cute, right? And you tried to pull the trick where if I do a white, I double clear. Whatever.
Yeah, and I was thinking back to first edition. Just a little bit of rust on the brain there, not fully paying attention to those changes.
But that has to work both ways because Kevin also probably doesn't know what the 2.0 or second edition Falcon dial looks like.
No. So he's right in this instance. So chat mentions that Deathfire gets to do a trajectory, and he does, but it doesn't go off until the next turn. So you couldn't get it to trigger the turn you wanted. It would be the next turn. So I mean, it could matter as far as boxing someone in, but it doesn't get the immediate effect.
Oh, there it is again.
So in this situation, like in my head, I was trying to figure out a way to keep Sabine alive because I realized I can't really block with you this turn. Like even if I do, your arc is still facing the right direction.
Ooh, it does say Wedge and Tilly's now, just so we're...
Yeah, we noticed it and we fixed it finally.
Yep, it was when Wedge lost his 2 shields that we noticed that the overlay was wrong, and I don't know why it messed up like that, but we just had to import the list a couple of times and it took care of it.
Yeah, it was strange.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we're lucky to even have some of this stuff that the community has put together, so I'm not going to complain at all.
Yep.
No.
Yep, free is a good price point.
Not only free, but also not a headache for me, because early on, trying to get this stream up and running, I tried to make my own overlay, and that's a mistake.
And then just to answer the chat question, if you can ask to see your opponent's dial, if you don't know what chip does. Yeah. It just
So,
sucks right after they set their dial and they're like, "Can I see that quick?" And you have to like grab it and move it around quick and hand it over.
Yep.
Yep. And so in this situation, like I said, I'm worried about Sabine getting torpedoed. And I was like, I don't think there's a good spot that I can put her, even if I token up, or she'll get to shoot Han. So I end up deciding the safest move for her. And then with Wedge, I just immediately was like, yeah, I'm just gonna Talon roll here because Luke is coming around, and if I line this up correctly, I should have crack shot active. I've already got my target lock, so I don't. I mean, I'd like to have a focus, but I don't need the mod, I guess, or I don't need the lock at least to get it off. So I'm sitting here going, well, I've already fired one torp. The best move with Wedge that I can take is to fire the second torp. And I figured my Luke's going to come in and potentially get a shot. And I sat there for a little bit and was like, I don't think there's a way that your Luke can get into a position where he can torpedo my Luke. So I had to think about that a lot.
Yeah.
But as you can see, I set my other dials pretty quick, and then this is me just lining up like in my head, okay, where's the bullseye arc of Wedge if I do the Talon roll?
Yep.
Okay, it should be here. Because I'm like, well, if Wedge is going to burn down this turn, he's at least going to get a crack shot or a torpedo off, hopefully, this turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my thinking, at least. But my dials were much faster this turn, Walker, because I had less to think about panicking about his Luke shooting my Luke.
Well, 2/3 of your moves would have you ram into Han too.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the key to beating you, Walker, huh? Just keep asking to see dials over and over again.
Like I told you, there's. Yeah, but the problem is, I'll forget what I was going to do, and I was probably going to do a bad move. But then you get back to me, and I'm like, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do," and it might have been a better move. So I mean, at your own peril, I guess. That was we were playing a game with drinking one time, and one guy kept setting the wrong. He kept trying to do moves. And we're like, your ship can't do that. Oh, well, then I'll just do this, and we'd be like, oh, that's a better move. Shoot.
Should have just let him do
every
it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kept wanting to do stuff. We're like, you can't do that, and you're like, then I'll just do this.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, that's better.
Yeah, so I I thought about doing the pre-angle boost, but I was worried I didn't have enough space to completely fit it, so I ended up just doing the barrel roll and then 4K with Sabine. It seemed like it made the most sense since I didn't want to risk 4King on top of Han and just take the safe.
But you should, with Sabine, you should have basically. I think you'll have both ships in arc no matter what.
Yeah, I just wanted to stay far enough away so Luke would have a harder time torpedoing her because I knew this was a turn that she was at risk, since she wouldn't have a token. But I assumed that since Han was locked down, unless he does like a 4 forward, and in which case he does a 4 forward, he doesn't get an action, so he's not shooting me, so she was safe. So I was like, all right, I'm either going to get a block with Wedge, or she's not going to get shot at this turn because of the double stress. So I was much safer K-turning her this turn than any other turn.
Mm-hmm.
See, there. That's where Kevin's thinking 2 steps further than I probably would have. I mean, I'm not saying it's saying much, but credit where credit's due.
Got to give him a little bit, right?
Only
Right.
every once in a while.
Right.
Someone's got to.
So was Wedge your target this turn, Jake? I assume he was.
Yeah, because the turn before my Luke had locked your Wedge. Again, I was still looking at if I can take Wedge off the table, then I positionally have advantage.
Sure. Did my Talon roll surprise you? I assume it didn't.
I'm trying to remember back if it. I figured you have to turn around probably either this turn or next, because if you don't do it this turn, then the next 2 turns you're not going to have shots because you're going to spend that turning around, and you're not going to go around the rocks, and that's more of knowing you, I think, than knowing your list.
Okay, that's fair. I was really sad though because I spatialized this correctly, and I would have had Crackshot active. I just never got to use it.
Wait, so what's going on right now with the templates?
So I'm talon rolling, and then I realized that I technically have 3 different positions I could be because I'm not using the second edition template. So I had to borrow Jake's template,
Oh, okay.
and then I had to say, "Oh, that's right. Can I be here, here, here?" So I was like,
thought-
maybe I want to be in the middle."
Jake had some form of advantage template. You're like, give me yours. I get a little more wiggle room.
Actually, he's the one
No.
with the advantage templates.
Yeah, currently I have an advantage template. And then this was also to try to maybe block Han's 2 bank, because I wasn't quite sure if I could go forward enough to block the bank. And then this is where Jake realized he can't double clear
Yeah.
stress.
It's just a bad turn. Completely bad overall.
And that's it, though, in those high pressure games. Like, one bad turn.
Well, and with second edition, we don't see as much stress. There's not as much stress control. So it really, I guess this example here shows just how much, even, just being double stressed, how much it can swing a game. Because had I only had one stress there, I do the same move, clear the stress with Kanan, and now all of a sudden, either your wedge isn't shooting, or Han slips away, from everything, and then he's still on the table for the next couple of turns.
Yep.
Yeah, I am enjoying not having Stress Hog or Ezra out there.
Yes, so am I. Oh, so am I. So yeah, this is where
3 hits.
we're gonna do the torp, and crack was active if I needed to use it.
2 hits and a crit. Ugh.
Yeah, and I blank out there.
Up and then take that crit.
Crit, I think, was weapons failure. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let's take what hit crit focus.
Mm-hmm.
Turn it all over for aggressive defense dice. We're having some shots here.
Yeah, and I was hoping for the block on this one so that you wouldn't be able to swing that side enough to be able to shoot Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping she would just not even get shot at. So then Luke's torpedo. This one was pretty brutal.
Oof, that's a lot of cards.
Yeah.
This one was really brutal. I think it was like 3 crits. It was like a hit and 3 crits.
Oh,
or something.
yeah.
Yeah. And the first one was a direct.
Yep. And that was the torpedo from your Luke.
Yep, that was the first torpedo from Luke. And now your Luke is going to shoot torpedo at my wedge, and I'm just going to clench.
Yep.
Those are good dice. And ooh. That's the best defense. The wedge is gone.
Mm-hmm. But I was like, well, I got both torpedoes off on him. He did his job.
Yep.
And there's Han as well.
Yeah, Han was just sitting on 1 health left there. So
Yeah.
The chat mentioned, I didn't think about it because I remember pointing to the card. If it was weapons failure, you would have had to re-roll that attack roll.
yeah, and I mean it might have been
So
weapons
you
failure.
did
I don't.
cheat.
Well, I don't remember if it was
On
weapons failure or
stream.
not. I mean,
And unforgivable.
unforgivable. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a stream
Get
if
some
somebody
waffle
didn't cheat,
fries.
right?
And like I had just pointed it out, so I wonder if I'm trying. I don't remember if I was like, oh yeah, he just rolled 3. It's fine. I must have like blanked it out after I pointed it out too. I don't remember.
Oh, so you got it. So Jake's got a shieldless Luke. With
A
one
shieldless-
health.
Was it weapons disabled, or I think no, I think it was the one. Was it? Is it blinded pilot that you can only modify with force?
That's what it was. It was blinded pilot.
Because we talked
That's
about
right.
blinded.
And then we giggled.
Yep.
But since you had blinded, you shouldn't have been able to make a crit that last one though, right? Because it's a modification on the proton torpedo.
But I think didn't I roll 1 crit, and I was gonna change the second to a crit, and that's
yeah,
what
maybe that's what it was.
we talked about it, and because you said, oh, you can't actually turn that to a crit because you can't modify.
Yeah, we'll have to double check that. And then on the future ones, we'll have a more streamlined process. This was a little bit harder because we were playing the game, so we couldn't
Yep.
monitor it as much as we normally would. Yeah.
But Jake's regained the moral high ground because we found out he was not a cheater.
Yes. Moral high ground has been reclaimed.
That's the only thing Jake can claim because it's not looking good for Jake.
No, unfortunately not.
Well, and actually, we do actually have blinded pilot right there on stream, so it's been sitting there for a while.
Oh yeah, there it is. I forgot about the UI being able to do that with the overlay.
Oh, I guess it was blinded, huh?
Yep.
I don't remember if at some point you fix it or not. I think you do.
I thought there was some point that we talked about the. Oh. Yeah, I don't remember either.
So I just want to point out that my dials are down before Jake's 1 dial.
Mm-hmm. I think I had a little extra dial time if I needed it, though. If we were running a chess clock, I think I'm up probably 3 or 4 minutes by now.
I mean, I would still like to see that because based on the way Kevin rolls his evade dice, I'd like to see the way he slaps that clock. Just bam.
So the chat just asked in this turn, or at this point in the game, what my win condition is, and it is if I can remove Sabine and then get half points on Luke. That's my win condition. We don't have enough time in the game to fully clear both his Sabine and Luke. Also, while trying to dodge both of his arcs. But I do have I've already lost 2 shields and have 1 crit on Luke. So not only do I need to remove his Sabine, do a couple, I think, because your Luke had no shields at this point. So put a damage through on you. I have to be able to regenerate and not let you regenerate. So it's a very difficult win condition.
Yeah, and I think I had you on like a 1 forward or like trying to get cute with the K turn or something. So that's why I put Luke where he was, and I was hoping to make it so you couldn't have a range 1 shot on Sabine, but you were able to barrel roll just out of arc, so I couldn't shoot you.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where it gets really tricky for me here is I have to keep doing this turn after turn if I hope to get that win condition. 2-on-1 is never ideal.
Well,
For you.
and those dice right there, 4 dice, you get a hit, 2 blanks, and a focus. That's not what the math says should have happened. So, I mean, really, at the end of this, we can probably claim you got diced.
I won't. You can if you want to. I'm never going to blame the dice. The way I look at it is, if I put myself in a position to lose, then that's why I lost. It's not the dice.
Well, and that's always what I've said about the dice is the dice won't necessarily make you lose. They'll just speed up the process for you.
Absolutely, and they can definitely do that. Definitely.
Well, you're about to see some dice variants and some Lisa's favor coming up very soon.
I mean, I did get a little bit lucky that your dice decided to go home on you.
Mm-hmm.
Are those Worlds dice?
They sure are, and they don't always roll very good. Andrew Bunn has seen them roll pretty bad many times in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about how like I thought you might try to get cute and do certain things, or because I was trying to block like the K turn, so if you had to, you were going to supernatural, and then you'd have no mods.
Yep.
And it's an interesting if you can be near the players at the table during situations like this, because then they'll talk about, all right, so here's what I was thinking. I was thinking you would potentially do this to do this, and because that was my thought process, right? Like if I can make you have to spend that force in order to execute your maneuver so that you're just not in a terrible position, it's at least a no mod shot at me, which mathematically puts me in the best position. Otherwise, fine, if I give up Sabine to take a focused target lock shot on you with 4 dice because I already had a torpedo in the can, or I have range 1, like that's a trade I'll make.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I'm trying to remember, because now Sabine's got actual ability to do stuff. I was trying to think of where can I put Luke to get maximum coverage, and I need to get Sabine away as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I was trying to decide where, again, where your ships are going to end up, to try to be able to use that supernatural, because if I can take shots at you unanswered, it closes that win condition for me. But odds are I can only do that for 1 or 2 turns before you're going to catch back up, turn around, and the positional game is going to flip on me.
Yep. I mean, it still helps you get to move last. That helps a lot.
Oh, it sure does. But, I mean, you still have to have at least a fairly good maneuver dialed in, even with supernatural, because, yeah, you have a little bit of ability to move and react after I see what you do, but I think I was planning on turning to the right here, thinking that you're either going to flip around or go slow to try to catch me jumping in front of you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know I have to, I know your win condition is you need to kill Sabine.
Right.
At minimum. So it's like, all right, wherever I'm going to point Luke's arc, I can just make Sabine be around that area. And then if you're going to chase her and commit, like I think you will, then here you go. You have to be in these areas.
Right. You can use her as bait to lure me into Luke's arcs.
Which is just, the 5th reason to have 2 ships versus 1. I mean, you have 2 arcs, you got 1 to use as bait. I mean, there's so many advantages of being 2, which is also part of the reason why a 2-ship meta is not there right now.
Yep. Well, and this is a lot too why why a lot of the different podcasts they talk about, when you're in that position, you're losing the game. You have to make big plays in order to get that swing. Like, I'm the one that has to take chances here. I can, if I have the opportunity to play it safe and get that unanswered shot on you, I mean, I'm going to try to push that as much as possible, but ultimately I have to take some risks and hope that, with a little bit of luck, some of that dice variance can help out, but can't count on it. And especially with force now.
Yep. Force plays a big factor in that too. Yep.
Because like in this position here, you were able to boost forward, turn around. You still have a dice mod.
2 dice mods because I have a lock and a force.
Ah, correct. Yes.
But this was a good example too of I could have just 4K'd, but I boosted before I 4K'd, which increased the angles that I can cover. that most ships that don't have the ability to use supernatural can.
Yep.
So
You widen your
yeah,
arc.
yeah, I widen the arc since at this point range is mostly irrelevant.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just the things that you can do
Mm-hmm.
are really cool and keep the situation interesting and dynamic, which is fun.
Yep. Well, like you saw early on when I did the pre-bank boost into a 4K, that's another thing, that pre-maneuver, you can have 3 different potential positions to do those moves, whether it's a 4K or you're going straight or turning, it just opens your options up so much.
So to answer chat, so the reason I didn't pre-boost was I know he has a torpedo, and mathematically the best thing I can try to do is get my evade and focused stack, and I know there's at least one turn where I just can't really get out of range 1. So I figured, all right, I'm just gonna evade, get my or barrel roll, get my evade, and then I have Neon, so I 3-banked, and then I took a focus because that gave me just the best options, I thought, because if I can get a focus and an evade instead of just a focus, because if I pre-boost and then do like a 4 forward or a 3-bank, if I want that evade token, I have to do a linked action, which takes away my focus evade the next turn. So it was like, okay, well, this turn I can't really get out of Luke's arc, and I'm in a good spot to set up a torpedo. I will just take the full stack on Sabine and say he has no mods except for maybe a force point. I'll take the evade, which should cancel out at least one of his dice, and try to get myself in a good position there. I mean, it works. You had to take the risk, and I get my torpedo off this turn.
Yep. And even after, like, I pre-boosted before my 2 turn to try to get just a little bit more range to get a little bit farther away. But again, I have to take those risks. I'm in a losing position, and I need something big to swing in my favor.
Yep. Which
it did.
You get that.
I mean, I did, but it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't have long
so in case
lasting.
anyone was watching,
yeah.
4 blanks on the first roll, 4 blanks, and I ended up getting 1 in an eyeball on the second. But I needed this torpedo to hit because it was my last torpedo. So in my opinion, it was worth spending the lock to try to get to 3 because you had no shields, and if I can put another crit on Luke, you're in a really bad spot.
Yes, that's an interesting thing we should talk about. Is a lot of times I think people will have the mods, like in your case, you just had target lock and a force that you could spend, and they'll roll that, maybe 1 hit or, hit an eyeball on 4 dice. And I think sometimes people will spend their mods on bad dice rolls chasing after that good one, but you're in a position here where you're winning, things are already going your way, so you can afford to be maybe a little bit more risky with your mods, knowing that I still have a hill to climb.
Yep. And my thought process is I'm not going to get another 4 dice shot probably this game.
Yeah.
So I need to try to swing for the variance on my side as much as I can. And knowing you had limited force on defense.
Yep.
So, well, I mean, I guess you had a focus. So you technically didn't have limited force on defense. You had all you needed, but whatever. The variance was there. I had double mods. You have to try to just go for it.
Well, and if you can convert into 3 or 4 hits there, then you're putting a damage or 2 into Luke, guaranteed, no matter what my dice come up. And
right, and 1's face up.
Yeah, and 1's face up, and with only sitting on 3 hull at that point, I think it was worth spending that lock in your shoes.
Yep.
Well, and I think wasn't time getting kind of tight here too?
Yeah,
we're starting to get towards the end of the round.
Yep. Which, coincidentally enough, dial times seem to increase.
What do you mean? Both my dials were down before yours were.
I mean,
really?
to be honest,
are they?
Yeah.
And then
I double checked mine,
and then you picked it back up.
But
by increase, do you mean stay consistent with how long they were at the beginning of the game?
That's true. Well, no, he sped up like the last 3 turns.
No, if you watch the games, my dial time only really increases on those turns when I had to really think about it.
Yeah.
There was only about 2 to 3 of them where I really had to figure it out.
Right.
I mean, it increases exponentially, but increases.
I mean, we got to bust your chops a little bit.
I'm surprised. I don't know if I ever regen this game.
No, you
I don't
didn't.
think I did.
Mm-mm.
I think this was like one of the first games with Luke that I never regen.
You know, I've been finding that because of Supernatural and you being able to pick your engagements a lot more carefully, you don't regen as often. You're not committed to that, oh, I'm just going to do the one forward, the one bank regen. And now having to take the weapons disabled token on top of it, I think you know, at least for myself, I've pushed it a few times where I might have been down a couple of shields but decided not to regen because I still had the 4 health and felt confident in being able to get a good position.
When you really have to be able to peel out and come back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's one thing where you're like, oh, I can take the disabled because I'm out of it. But, I mean, is it really worth it to regen 1 when you leave Han out there to drive for 2 rounds while Luke's regenning a shield?
Right.
Yep. Yeah, in hindsight, I think on this turn, I wish I would have just one forwarded, I think, instead of one banking. But I was trying to make it so you wouldn't have a shot at Luke that's not answered.
Mm-hmm.
He did that by bumping his Luke with his template to make sure that when he put his move down,
yeah,
cleared a little better. But, you know, wherever, just put it wherever you want.
We did get to see a lot of value from Nia Num, though, this game with Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
There were many times where I did the 3 banks or the 2 banks after getting a token stack, and I've really gotten to like that combo.
Oh, yeah, I think that's similar to the either, I guess, whether you want to go R2 or R2D2, the 89 or 91 point Luke. I think Sabine, that build with her is pretty much locked into trick shot in the end, at least in my mind too, from flying it a few times.
Yep.
It keeps her cheap enough that if you do lose half points, you're only giving away what, 22 points, I think it is.
Yep, she's 44. Yep.
Yeah, but being able to have that token stack almost every single turn is too valuable.
Yeah, and there were so many times at Coruscant where I needed the token stack in a situation because I'm going to block or because I have someone chasing me, and I couldn't go fast enough. Ugh, like I could only 1 bank or 2 forward, and that's just not far enough. And after I played a couple games with Nia Num, I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. I can go far enough now because I showed my son in a situation where he thought he was just going to 4 forward and block someone.
Okay.
I showed him, if you barrel roll and then 3 bank, you'll be in the almost exact same spot as the 4 forward blocks, and you get a token stack. And
Oh, sure.
Like, oh, that's awesome. I'm not a big fan of Juke on Sabine. 1 for point cost, 2 for her pilot skill or her initiative. It's too low. She gets shot at by too many ships that make her spend the evade token, and a 4th die from trick shot makes her such a cannon. And it protects her because it allows me to set her up behind rocks and get 3 dice with focus evade. And then also gain an offensive dice. I feel the value of the 4th dice from trick shot plus the defensive bonuses massively outweigh what I can gain from Juke. Because people often try to kill Sabine, and I'm spending that evade token a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that Whisper works so well with Juke and some of these other high initiative ships work so well is because they shoot so early in the order. Where at a 3, you shoot much later in the order. My son is just turned 14, and I didn't really let him play. Like, he played a little bit of first edition, and it was towards the end. He got to see what Kylo felt like, and he wasn't really interested in it. So I kept him away from X-Wing for a while, and now that 2nd edition has come out, we've started to play, and I was just actually telling Jake that I think he might come with us for Adepticon if he can start playing enough games and kind of get serious enough about it. Which,
you know, he's almost to the age where he can really appreciate my humor, because it's really my target audience.
Well, and he hears me talk about Nathan, and he's like, you're prouder than Nathan than you are of me. And I'm like, well,
Oh, ouch.
Well, we've established that Nathan is just you from a different timeline, or how do we ever figure that out?
Kevin has come back from the future.
Yeah. Nathan is past me, and I am future me, and we merge together.
But really keeping him, at a little bit younger of an age, keeping him away from the end of first edition was
Oh yeah.
probably the right call. I mean, it just,
She doesn't mislearn things.
well, mislearn things and rely on all of the turrets that there were. Unfortunately, with the bombs and trajectory simulator there at the end of first edition, it got to be a game that wasn't that fun to play. And had you got him in and had him play at that time, I think he would have lost interest really quick, and then you would
Yep.
never get him back.
Well, I mean, in one little small store tournament, he had played against Nim, he had played against Kylo with Quick Draw, and he had played against Fairship Rebel, all in the same thing.
Yep.
And after every single one of his games, he was like, "This is not fun." And I just looked at his face, and I went, "Oh, yeah, I'm not going to make you have to endure this. I don't want you to hate this game. I want you to like it. So we'll just have you wait."
Yep. And there you see after that shot, I think you shot Luke, your Luke at my Luke. I knew that it was over. I couldn't win anymore, and I think it was the time in the round too.
Yeah, time got called. Yep.
Yeah. But that just showed my win condition that I talked about earlier. I needed to kill Sabine and be able to put another damage in Luke, and I didn't have the time. Ran out.
Yep, I think that's what it came down to. Yep.
Had I maybe been a little bit more aggressive and maybe turned Han in instead of going around the rock and getting into that corner, I might have been able to do a little bit more damage earlier, which maybe would have helped increase that win condition at the end when it was your Sabine and Luke versus my Sabine. But I also think it shows that two ships probably are still a little bit weak in the game right now.
I think so. We had another question from chat. So yes, putting myself behind the rock does give them an additional defense dice, but offense dice are significantly more powerful than defense dice are, especially if maybe they have spent a mod. And since Sabine fires, so the idea is they're probably spending a mod, whether it's Luke shooting at them, Wedge shooting at them, or them shooting before Sabine, so that by the time Sabine shoots, they probably don't have a mod. And if that's the case, then my offense dice is significantly better than their defense dice that they gain. But it also protects Sabine, and it makes you play in a way where she is more protected. So it's a benefit on offense and defense.
But see, it benefits you on offense, but then you're also, you're giving yourself that rock on defense anyway without punishing yourself, really.
So would that maybe be what you talked about there, Kevin, was her being a lower pilot skill and the other two ships stripping tokens? Would that maybe be a case to argue for Juke?
Yes, if she wasn't shot at so much.
Okay.
Because I find that I'm spending that evade token a lot.
Okay.
And she does get shot at a lot. And like they asked, so in like attacking my list, is it better to attack Sabine first or Wedge? I think you have to kill Wedge. If you don't kill Wedge and I lose Sabine, you are taking far more damage than you are doing to me.
Yeah, you mentioned Wedge is the hammer of the list, and he definitely is, and you do need to get rid of him first, I believe.
Yep. You have to try to prevent Wedge from firing bolt torpedoes, I think is your goal.
Yep.
I mean, Sabine is a threat, but she's less scary than Wedge is. And that's the interesting part. I mean, there's really 3 4-dice attacks that I can shoot at you in one turn. All right, well, I will close this out and have a good night.
Yeah, thanks everybody for checking us out.